Philippines has drawn a clear line in the turbulent waters of the West Philippine Sea, asserting what it calls its incontrovertible sovereign rights against rising waves of misinformation and revisionism. In a rare and forceful move, the Department of Foreign Affairs, DFA, publicly rebuked some countries, a thinly veiled reference to China, for promoting an erroneous opinion that distorts treaties and undermines the nation's maritime boundaries. This sharp exchange is not merely about disputed reefs or shifting maps. It is a struggle between international law and power politics, between the integrity of the rules-based order and attempts to rewrite it through coercion. Anchored on UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award, the Philippines' position is clear. Its rights within the Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, are backed by law, history, and precedent.
You already have a victory in the Arbitral Award, which they've refused to recognize. Follow it up. If they keep on refusing to recognize legal proceedings, the Security Council must do something about it, to China's detriment.
From the Treaty of Paris to the Philippine Constitution, the country's territorial claims rest on firm legal and constitutional foundations that no reinterpretation can erase. Recent legislation, such as the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, and strong pronouncements from President Marcos Jr., the West Philippine Sea is ours, reinforce this legal and moral clarity.
The Philippines cannot yield. The Philippines cannot waver. Ang West Philippine Sea ay hindi katang-isip natin lamang. Ito ay atin. Ito ay At ito ay mananatiling atin hanggat nag-aalab ang diwa ng ating minamahal na bansang Pilipinas.
Amid increasing Chinese gray zone aggression, from dangerous water cannon attacks to illegal incursions at Second Thomas Shoal, the Philippines has responded with transparency and restraint, combining firm diplomacy with proportionate action. The public, too, stands united. Surveys show overwhelming support for defending the nation's maritime rights, a sentiment echoed across political lines. Meanwhile, Manila's network of allies, led by the United States, Japan, Australia, and other like-minded nations, continues to expand, forming a rules-based coalition that recognizes the 2016 ruling as binding and rejects any distortion of UNCLOS. This growing web of partnerships strengthens not only Philippine defense, but also the broader Indo-Pacific order. Ultimately, the Philippines' pushback is more than a matter of territory. It is a defense of principle. By standing firm against false narratives and unilateral aggression, Manila reaffirms that law, not might, must define the world's seas. And in doing so, the Philippines has emerged not just as a claimant, but as a steadfast defender of the global rules-based order. The Philippines' claim over the West Philippine Sea, WPS, stands on one of the strongest legal and historical foundations in modern maritime disputes. It is not a claim built on power, proximity, or politics, but on a century's worth of treaties, laws, and international rulings that clearly define what belongs to the Filipino nation. The Department of Foreign Affairs, DFA, has repeatedly emphasized that the country's maritime boundaries are not up for reinterpretation. They are rooted in international law and historical continuity. At the heart of this claim lies a trilogy of landmark treaties that shaped the modern Philippine state. The 1898 Treaty of Paris between Spain and the United States formally ceded the Philippine archipelago to the U.S., which, as the DFA notes, crystallized our islands into a cohesive whole. This was followed by the 1900 Treaty of Washington, which clarified that Philippine sovereignty extended even to outlying islands that were not explicitly named in the Treaty of Paris, a move that legally secured territories beyond the simple coordinates drawn by colonial powers. Finally, the 1930 U.S. Great Britain Convention further reaffirmed and clearly and firmly stated the extent of Philippine territory, setting boundaries recognized by international partners long before the current dispute. These treaties, together with the Philippine constitutions of 1935, 1973, and 1987, have continuously reinforced the legal and moral imperative to protect the country's territorial and maritime integrity. Modern international law only strengthened this foundation. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, to which both the Philippines and China are signatories, the Philippines possesses sovereign rights within its 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, EEZ. This principle was upheld and globally recognized in the 2016 arbitral award issued by the Permanent Court of Arbitration, PCA, in The Hague, which unanimously ruled in favor of Manila. The tribunal declared that China's sweeping 9-line claim had no legal basis under international law, and that Beijing had violated the Philippines' sovereign rights by blocking fishermen and damaging marine ecosystems through artificial island building. As President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. later reaffirmed, all claims have to pass the test of conformity with international law, particularly UNCLOS, and definitive, binding interpretations such as the 2016 arbitral award.
So the lines that we draw in our waters are not derived from just our imagination, but from international law. We have on our side the 1982 UNCLOS and the binding 2016 arbitral award, which affirms what is ours by legal right. In this solid footing and through our clear moral ascendancy, we find the strength to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereign home, to the last square inch, to the last square millimeter. The life-giving waters of the West Philippine Sea flow in the blood of every Filipino. We cannot allow anyone to detach it from the totality of the maritime domain that renders our nation whole.
In contrast, China's position remains anchored in defiance. Beijing continues to reject the 2016 ruling as illegal, null, and void, clinging instead to its 9-line, an ambiguous demarcation that appears on its maps but holds no recognition in international law. The erroneous opinion condemned by the DFA refers to Beijing's ongoing attempts to reinterpret or weaponize historical treaties, particularly the Treaty of Paris, to suggest that Philippine territory is smaller than established by law, conveniently excluding areas like the Calayayan Island Group, KIG, and Bajo de Masinloc, Scarborough Shoal. These distortions aim to erode international confidence in the arbitral ruling and create a false narrative of shared or overlapping sovereignty. For Manila, this is more than a legal debate. It is a battle to preserve truth, history, and national dignity. The Philippines case is one of the clearest examples of how small and mid-sized nations can stand firm against great powers through the rule of law rather than the law of force. Each time the DFA restates its position, it reaffirms not only a claim over territory, but also the principle that international law must remain stronger than coercion. At the heart of the West Philippine Sea dispute lies a small, rusting ship that has become the symbol of a nation's defiance, the BRP Sierra Madre, grounded deliberately on the Second Thomas Shoal, Ayungin Shoal, in 1999 to mark the Philippines' sovereign presence. What was once a forgotten outpost has now become the front line of an increasingly volatile standoff between the Philippine Navy and the Chinese Coast Guard, CCG. The confrontations near this shoal have evolved from tense maritime standoffs into dangerous, almost routine clashes, revealing the true stakes of the Philippines' struggle to maintain its hold over its waters. Chinese vessels have escalated their use of gray zone tactics, coercive but technically non-military actions meant to intimidate without triggering open conflict. The China Coast Guard, often flanked by its maritime militia, has repeatedly used high-pressure water cannons to block or disable Philippine vessels attempting to bring food, fuel, and supplies to the small contingent of Filipino Marines stationed aboard the Sierra Madre. These attacks have shattered windows, damaged navigation systems, and in some cases, injured Filipino sailors. In one particularly alarming 2024 incident, a Philippine crew member reportedly lost a thumb after CCG personnel boarded a resupply boat armed with axes and knives. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, BFAR, and the Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, have documented multiple such encounters, each more aggressive than the last, while global observers note that these gray zone tactics are part of Beijing's broader campaign to gradually normalize its control over the WPS without firing a single shot. But the confrontation is not just about sovereignty, it's about resources and survival. The West Philippine Sea is home to some of the region's richest fishing grounds and is believed to contain significant untapped oil and natural gas deposits. For a resource-hungry nation like China, securing these waters is as much an economic priority as it is a strategic one. The Philippines, by contrast, views the same territory as essential to its food security and energy independence. This is why Manila sees the so-called erroneous opinions, interpretations of old treaties that attempt to narrow Philippine sovereignty, not merely as historical distortions, but as attempts to justify economic encroachment on its rightful resources. Despite the increasing danger, the Philippine government has stood firm, bolstered by a wave of domestic unity rarely seen in modern times. Surveys conducted by Pulse Asia and Social Weather Stations, SWS, in 2024 to 2025 show that roughly 73% of Filipinos support the government's hardline defense of its West Philippine Sea rights, reflecting widespread public awareness and outrage over China's maritime aggression. The issue has transcended partisanship. It has become a matter of national dignity and collective identity. As National Security Advisor Eduardo Año put it, "We will continue our resupply missions, no matter how dangerous. The West Philippine Sea is not just a body of water, it is part of who we are as a nation." His words capture the emotional core of the Philippines' stand. A small country refusing to bow to a superpower, driven by law, conviction, and the enduring belief that sovereignty, once yielded, can never be reclaimed. The Philippines no longer stands alone in the stormy waters of the West Philippine Sea. What was once a solitary defense of sovereignty has evolved into a powerful and expanding web of global partnerships, a rules-based coalition built on the shared conviction that the world's oceans must be governed by law, not by force. As China continues to assert its sweeping maritime claims and employ gray zone tactics in disputed waters, Manila's commitment to international law has become a rallying point for democratic allies determined to preserve freedom of navigation and regional stability in the Indo-Pacific. At the heart of this coalition stands the United States, the Philippines' oldest and most powerful ally under the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, MDT. This treaty, often described as the bedrock of Philippine security, obliges both nations to come to each other's aid in the event of an armed attack, and in recent years, Washington has made it crystal clear that this commitment covers any attack on Philippine armed forces, aircraft, or public vessels, including those of the Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea. The U.S. has not only reaffirmed this pledge rhetorically, but has demonstrated it through tangible actions. Large-scale joint military exercises, such as Malacañang, which involved more than 17,000 troops, have been expanded to include complex operations in the northern Philippines and waters adjacent to the West Philippine Sea. These drills, combined with the resumption of high-level 2+2 ministerial dialogues between the defense and foreign secretaries of both countries, have reinvigorated one of Asia's most enduring alliances. The result is a renewed partnership that blends deterrence and diplomacy, a clear message that aggression in the region will not go unanswered. Beyond Washington, other key allies are stepping up as strategic partners in defending the maritime rules-based order. Japan, long a major development partner, has now become a frontline security collaborator. In 2024, Tokyo and Manila signed the Reciprocal Access Agreement, RAA, a landmark pact that allows for the easier deployment of troops and equipment on each other's soil, as well as joint exercises near or within the West Philippine Sea. The agreement, Japan's first of its kind in Southeast Asia, represents a major turning point in regional security cooperation. It signals Japan's recognition that the defense of the Philippines, and by extension, the South China Sea, is inseparable from the defense of Japan's own trade routes and national interests. Australia, meanwhile, has transitioned from a supportive partner into an active maritime ally. In cooperation with the United States and Japan, Canberra has joined the Philippines in joint maritime patrols aimed at upholding freedom of navigation and deterring coercive actions. These patrols, conducted in international waters, underscore the principle that the West Philippine Sea is not a private lake for any one nation, but a shared maritime commons governed by law. Australian and Filipino forces have also increased defense exchanges, training programs, and interoperability exercises under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Program, ensuring that future cooperation extends beyond symbolism to operational readiness. This widening network of allies has also begun to draw in emerging players. India, for instance, has rapidly deepened its defense ties with the Philippines as part of its broader Act East policy. The two countries have elevated their relationship to a strategic partnership, conducting their first ever joint naval exercises in 2025 and exploring cooperation in defense technology and maritime domain awareness. India's growing involvement demonstrates how New Delhi views the South China Sea as part of the same strategic continuum that links the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, a single theater where freedom of navigation and respect for sovereignty are equally vital. Support also comes from across the Atlantic, where Western democracies are lending consistent diplomatic weight to Manila's cause. The European Union, EU, United Kingdom, UK, and Canada have all issued strong statements supporting the 2016 Arbitral Award and reaffirming the importance of UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, as the governing framework for maritime disputes. By explicitly rejecting China's erroneous opinions, particularly those that attempt to reinterpret old colonial treaties to shrink the Philippines' territorial rights. These countries reinforce that the issue is not merely a regional quarrel, but a test of the international order itself. Their support has extended to naval presence and capacity-building initiatives, with European and Canadian vessels increasingly visible in freedom of navigation operations across the South China Sea, signaling a shared vigilance against coercion. Collectively, this growing alliance of nations represents far more than a loose grouping of convenience. It is a rules-based coalition grounded in the belief that stability, prosperity, and peace in the Indo-Pacific depend on adherence to international law and mutual respect for sovereignty. For the Philippines, this convergence of diplomatic, military, and moral support marks a pivotal moment in its history. No longer isolated or overshadowed, Manila now stands at the heart of a regional and global movement to defend the principle that might does not make right. In this network of allies from Washington to Tokyo, Canberra to New Delhi, Brussels to London, the Philippines finds not only reassurance but renewed strength. Its struggle in the West Philippine Sea is no longer a solitary fight for territorial integrity. It is part of a collective stand for a rules-based international order, where even small nations can assert their rights without fear. Every naval exercise, every diplomatic statement, and every reaffirmation of the 2016 Arbitral Award adds another layer of legitimacy and deterrence to the Philippines' position. In the churning waters of the West Philippine Sea, that solidarity has become the country's greatest anchor and its most powerful weapon. In the end, the Philippines' firm rebuttal of the so-called erroneous opinion is far more than a diplomatic exchange. It is a reaffirmation of principle, a deliberate stand to protect not only its national territory, but also the global system that governs peace and cooperation among nations. By anchoring its position in international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and the 2016 arbitral ruling, Manila is recentering the global conversation on legitimacy rather than force, truth rather than distortion. The Philippines refuses to let historical revisionism, particularly narratives that attempt to twist old treaties into tools of modern expansion, overwrite the clear and binding realities established by international law. This is not simply a fight for reefs or rocks, it is a defense of the rules-based international order itself. Every statement, every patrol, every diplomatic note from Manila serves as a reminder that even small and middle powers have both the right and the responsibility to uphold the law when it is threatened. In this light, the Philippines stands as a moral and strategic anchor in the Indo-Pacific, a state that has chosen law over coercion, cooperation over capitulation. Its struggle resonates beyond its shores, embodying the conviction that the integrity of international law must remain intact if peace is to endure. Ultimately, the Philippines' stand in the West Philippine Sea is about more than defending its borders. It is about defending the very idea that justice and order must prevail over power and intimidation. In asserting its incontrovertible rights, Manila has positioned itself not as a mere claimant in a maritime dispute, but as one of the world's key defenders of global maritime law. A nation proving that courage, when rooted in legality and principle, can still command respect on the world stage.
If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.